Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Mark and B and anybody else who's already watching and already in the chat. We're going to get started. First of all, the big news is that Ross Gerber was critical of Tesla's earnings report because Ross has never been negative about Tesla before, and this is just a massive shock. And somehow that's newsworthy. And lost gerbils will go wherever they go. I think the backdrop behind him is hilarious. Um, and I guess Tesla stock is down about 7% right now. It's early in the day. Who knows what's going on? I don't think Ross is driving the stock down, and I don't think the earnings report has that much of an impact. But I'm going to go through. I have a lot of content to get to, and a lot of this is going to be audio content, video content. It's really audio content, and you're going to see a lot of non-moving video up here, but you'll hear the audio with it. So let's get started.
To really greatly increase the motion service area to well in excess of what competitors are doing. And that's hopefully in a week or so, couple weeks?
Yeah, a couple of weeks.
A couple weeks or so.
And that was the dreaded 2 weeks. 2 weeks is always the death knell of anything for Tesla. If Elon says something's going to happen in 2 weeks, then you've got to worry what's going on. No, but positively, I have a bunch of clips about Robotaxi, and the Robotaxi network is expanding. It looks like it's expanding quickly. We had one expansion. You're going to hear more later about some really substantial expansion coming for the Robotaxi network. So let's hear a little bit more.
We're getting the regulatory permission to launch in the Bay Area, Nevada, Arizona, and Florida, and a number of other places. So as we
just real quick, Mark says Elon was on downers. I've heard some other criticism that Elon didn't have the right tone. I just went through this. As you can see, I've selected like a whole bunch of bits here. I've listened to this call now like 3 times, and I hear tremendous optimism from Elon. So people are saying there was something with his tone. I don't know what you're talking about. Mark, I love you, Mark, but I hear a very upbeat and very excited Elon. I'm very happy with the way things are going with the company and very positive. So I'm going to keep playing this, but because I noticed Mark said that in the chat, I just wanted to address that. Like, because my friend Bradford and there's another guy. They were like Nick Gibbs or something like that. They're like, oh, Elon's tone was off, and Elon needs to really have better tone for these earnings calls. Like, how many earnings calls have you guys watched? Elon is always weird on earnings calls. It doesn't matter. Like, listen to the content. There's good content. There's concerning content. I would make more money doing that than YTX. Oh, being an analyst? No, I wouldn't make money as an analyst. I don't know how to do that. I know how to talk to a camera. Thank you, Pontus. But I do think what I'm doing, just to be clear here, I'm not going to talk about earnings per share. I'm not going to talk about next quarter much. I'm looking at what does this mean long term for the company, and that's how I look at these earnings calls, is they give us insight into what's going on going forward. I'm not going to nitpick here and there. I'm a little worried about Q3 now because of no. No, it's silly. So but I appreciate that, Pontus. The focus for me is where does this take Tesla in the next 3 to 5 years, or if not longer, not what's happening next quarter, what's happening Q4. I'll talk a little bit about some of that, but mostly I focus on the long term. So let me get back to the clip.
Get the approvals and we prove out safety, then we'll be launching autonomous ride-hailing in most of the country. And I think we'll probably have autonomous ride-hailing in probably half the population of the U.S. by the end of the year. That's at least our goal.
So that was a very positive statement. And I know a couple people are questioning, how is that even possible? So if you think about it, what they talked about was California, Texas, Florida, Nevada, Arizona. California is a large chunk of the U.S. population. Texas is a large chunk of the U.S. population. Florida is a large chunk of the U.S. population. If you are able to expand to cover all of California, all of Florida, all of Texas, and all of Arizona, let's say, and maybe a couple other states, I don't know if you get to 50% of the U.S. population, but you get a big chunk of the U.S. population. I think that projection from Elon is not really consistent with something else he said I'll talk about later. Like, he wasn't very optimistic about when we're going to see a financial impact. It's like, well, if you're covering half the country with Robotaxi, and I think the problem is they're not going to have enough volume of Robotaxis to drive. They're not going to have a million Robotaxis running. But if you were covering half the country, you could have a million Robotaxis running. So, and then you'd be generating like crazy amounts of revenue. And that means you're on the ramp to 10 million, and then you're on the ramp to the $500 billion in gross profit that I've talked about so much, at 25x and all kinds of crazy stuff. But, that's a very optimistic state from Elon. He does say, subject to regulatory approval, I think right here.
Subject to regulatory approvals.
Subject to regulatory approvals. I got a ton more. This is just a monster. But that point that they're expanding in Austin, they're getting ready to go to the San Francisco Bay Area soon. There's more about that coming. Other places, they mentioned a few other places, more to come.
The service areas and the number of vehicles in operation will increase at a hyper exponential rate.
The service areas and number of vehicles will increase at a hyper exponential rate. If I heard that right, that's very positive. Hyper exponential. Exponential is fast. Hyper exponential, what does that mean? So, Austin's going to grow fast. San Francisco Bay Area is going to happen. Florida, Texas, I don't know. I mean, Florida, the rest of Texas, Nevada. We don't have a lot of detail here, but we have a lot of little tidbits. Elon sounded the same as all other quarterly reports. Yep. Yeah, please follow me on X, WR4NYGov. Thank you. California plus Texas plus Florida is 30% of the U.S. population. Yeah, and so, you added a few more states, and you're getting close to 50%. Arizona's a little bit. Nevada's a little bit. You're probably getting close to 40 with those two and a couple more. So, I don't know.
We already did the first wave of expansion in Austin, and we'll continue to expand in Austin to probably more than 10x our current operating region.
More than 10x our current operating region. That's pretty big. That was Ashok speaking, I think. So they are targeting fairly soon to be operating pretty much the greater Austin area. I mean, if you're more than 10x the current location, they're probably going out to Bastrop, which is where the SpaceX and Boring Company facilities are, and that will include Giga Texas. They're probably going to places like, what is it called, Round Rock or whatever, South Austin. There's a bunch of areas around Austin. Kyle, I don't know. If they really expand more than 10x, that's a huge area. And then, the question is, when do they start going to San Antonio, and where are they going to start doing Robotaxi rides between Austin and San Antonio? I don't know if they want to do that, because the road from Austin to San Antonio is like 90 miles an hour. I don't know if they're ready to run Robotaxis at 90 miles an hour without a person in the driver's seat, but they should be. Yeah, people are complaining the CFO can't speak understandable English. I saw somebody say that. Maybe it was Alexandra, Tesla Boomer Mama. I understood him. I understood him as well as I understood Elon. I don't know. There were a couple of moments where I didn't understand it, but Elon just had a hyper exponential, and I think that's what he said. I think that's really more about the microphones and the technology of the call rather than about anything to do with VibeHub's voice or accent. So I think that was not a big deal. Let's keep going.
We're also testing in a lot of other cities, as Elon mentioned. The next thing to expand would be in the San Francisco Bay Area. We are working with the government to get approval here, and in the meanwhile, launch the service with the person in the driver's seat just to expedite.
So they're going to launch in the San Francisco Bay Area. They're waiting for regulatory approval, but they're going to launch in the San Francisco Bay Area with a person in the driver's seat. Okay. That's something that we had talked about a lot. People have suggested that. Now we know that's part of the plan. Gavin asks, why is the car business stagnant? This was not predicted a few years ago. Is it just a lull in the exponential growth? Well, what they've said in the past is that they're between growth curves. That I think they feel that the auto business has grown as much as it's going to grow, and then now the autonomy business is going to take over. The Robotaxi business is going to take over one growth curve, and then Optimus is going to be the next growth curve. I think there's a few things that came together that limited vehicle growth. Number one, the Chinese are just really good at making low-cost EVs. So the bottom end of the market is just taken, and Tesla isn't really competing in that end of the market. And then there's all kinds of things. COVID came up, and supply chain issues came up, and is brand damage a thing? I don't know if brand damage is a thing. Tesla's still the best-selling car in a lot of places. The Model Y is still the best-selling car in a lot of places. They haven't been able to bring the cost down as much as they wanted. That's probably the biggest thing. Interest rates are not helping. Thank you, Chadwick. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that are coming together to inhibit auto sales. I know Tesla just recently rapidly expanded the size of their sales network in Japan, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. They have expanded a little bit here in Thailand. So if they're expanding their sales network, I think that's because they have a lower cost models coming, which we're going to talk about later. And if they have lower cost models coming, maybe they can sell a little bit more in India. Maybe they can sell a little bit more in Japan. Maybe they can sell a little bit more in Thailand. We'll see. Maybe there's going to be some growth, but I don't expect that much growth in auto sales. And yeah, Mark nails it in the chat. One Robotaxi will take 5 owned cars off the road, maybe 8. Yeah, once Robotaxi starts happening at scale, which is next year, not this year, this is all going to seem trivial. Like people are focused on selling iron, and it's like we're selling. They're talking about selling like wall phones, and we're already selling like smartphones. Like, who cares what the wall phone sales are? We're heading towards a world of smartphones. Nokia was doing great when the iPhone came out, and everybody's like, "Oh, Nokia's going to keep growing." And Nokia pretty much died. I mean, they're not dead, but they didn't do well after that.
While we wait for regulatory approval.
Yeah, so this really Tesla's Robotaxi fleet will go from tiny to gigantic in terms of operations in a pretty short period of time. Like, my guess is it has a material impact on our financials around the end of next year.
So that one I found troubling. Will have a financial impact by the end of next year, which is the end of 2026. It's like, well, if you think you're going to be operating in areas covering 50% of the U.S. population by the end of this year, subject to regulatory approval, shouldn't you have a lot of cars running? Like, I don't understand what the expansion plan is, because he says we're going to see a hyper exponential growth in area covered in vehicles. So, once you get to 100,000 vehicles doing $50,000 a year in gross profit, I think that's already material to the company. And then you get to 1 million, because that's $5 billion a year in gross profit. That's material. That's a quarter of the gross profit. So, how are you covering half the country and not having 100,000 cars running? I think there's a really interesting problem there. And yeah, once they start scaling the Robotaxi network, then they're not going to need to sell cars anymore. I mean, the cars are going to go into the Robotaxi fleet. Any car that isn't sold goes in the Robotaxi fleet. Any car that is sold might be sold to somebody who's putting it in the Robotaxi fleet. Yes, please like this video, share, and subscribe. Thank you, Mark, for reminding me of that. If they believe in FSD, then just keep producing cars and put them in the Robotaxi fleet if not sold. I don't understand. I mean, that's something that wasn't asked well or wasn't answered. I don't think it was really asked well. It's like, well, what would keep you from just producing cars and putting them in the fleet? There was a question about financing that, which I don't know if that's really a problem.
Yes, thank you. Could you just unpack the different costs associated with scaling the Robotaxi business and how you think about funding those costs? Are the cash flows in the auto business sufficient to fund it? And if not, what other funding sources do you think you'd use? Would you just fund it off the balance sheet?
So I want to address this first, which, as I understand the process, if you put a vehicle in the fleet, let's say it costs you $50,000 for your car, and you put it in the Robotaxi fleet, and it generates $50,000 a year in gross profit, which in the early days, you're probably going to be more than that because the price per mile is going to be higher. And the cost per mile, he talks about this later, the cost per mile of a Model Y in the Robotaxi fleet might be 50 cents a mile. So if you're selling rides for $1.50 a mile, I mean, I think we're really more like $2 a mile in the early days. Then you're making if it's $2 a mile and your cost is 50 cents a mile, you're making $1.50 a mile. And then you multiply that by 60,000 paid miles, the cars are making $90,000 a year in gross profit. So the car's paid for itself in a little more than 6 months. So I don't know. And then, then it's just spinning cash. So I would think that the existing RoboFlex taxi fleet is going to generate enough revenue that it's not the cash flow from selling cars that's going to finance the expansion of the Robotaxi fleet. It's that once you get the Robotaxi fleet going and it's spinning cash, the Robotaxi fleet is spinning enough cash to finance the future robotaxis. And Mark says one cybercab every 5 seconds coming, but I don't think cybercab's going to be that big until late 2026. So much of what is expected with Tesla is speculation, not fact. I don't know what your point is there. The whole point of all those YouTubers talking about Tesla is we're speculating. I mean, that's all we do. Of course it's speculation. What the hell else would it be? They don't want to scale using Model Y. They want to scale using Cybercab, which starts. No, I think they're going to scale using Model Y. They are going to scale. They're scaling now. They're getting ready to scale now. They're going to scale bigger with Cybercab, but they're scaling with they're going to want 1 million Model Ys in the Robotaxi fleet in the future anyway. So they're scaling, baby.
Well, as soon as there is a clear cash flow stream associated with any product, you can debt finance it.
And in the interim?
I mean, in the interim, we will use our balance sheet, but once we get to a certain scale in terms of recurring revenues, like Elon said, we could get into easily a BS kind of transaction to try and get funding.
So, Elon raises the point that once we demonstrate a business model and this thing is spending cash, then we can borrow money if we need to. I don't think Elon's saying we will borrow money. I don't think Vaibhav is saying we will borrow money. Vaibhav said we'll run off our balance sheet. We got $37 billion in cash. You can finance a lot of cars with $37 billion. I mean, let's say it's $10 billion and it's 50,000. I don't think Tesla's cost is anywhere near $50,000 for a Model Y. But if Tesla's, pumping out cars at its own cost of $40,000, then that's what, for how many cars is $1 billion? 2,500? 250? I don't know. I don't know how to do that math off the top of my head, but I think they can pump out a fair number of robo-taxis. 40,000, 25 cars is 1 million, so 25,000 cars is 1 billion. So 250,000 cars is 10 billion, and they got 37 billion on their sheet. They can pump, and then once you have 250,000 cars out there spending $50,000 a year in gross profit, the next year it's just like crazy. You're just pumping out cash, and you make as many cars as you want. Looking at the chat again. Not worried about Tesla. The other automakers, other automakers are dead soon. I think it's dead. Daryl says, so in the end, Elon and the Tesla team will have to produce the goods that will work and be accepted by society. Are you a bot? Like, how is that? That's a really odd thing to say. Most Morgue-like conference call I've ever heard, that was god-awful in enthusiasm. I've heard a lot of enthusiasm in this call. I don't know what you're hearing. Elon's talking about, Tesla being the most valuable company in the world and rapidly scaling Robotaxi, and Optimus is looking great. I heard a lot of positives. I think you can hear negatives if you want to hear them. I mean, the technology, the call is always crappy, but I don't. I listened to this call like 3 times now, and I never heard it sounding negative. Safety driver expense will hold profit down until middle of next year. We don't know when they let go of the safety driver. That's true that will be a cost. Tesla down 28 buckaroonies. We'll buy some more if it goes below 300. Not financial advice, but I buy when I have free cash. If you lower costs by 10x, disruptions take over. Yeah, after a while, even they are tired of the speculation. Okay, whatever. Robotaxi. Daryl, just to let you know, you're on the edge of getting hidden from the chat because you're just You sound like a bot. Robotaxi be less bot. Robotaxi viability needs to be proven through incident counts versus miles traveled along with severity. There haven't been any incidents. Do you think Model Q will be using the paint injected body panels like Cybercab uses? No. Robotaxi will function in urban areas. However, its reach into rural America. Rural America is like a long way away, and that's not a concern. Blown away when Elon said they will supply half the U.S. ride. No, he didn't say they'll supply half the U.S. rideshare market by the end of this year. He said that they will have robo-taxis operating in areas that cover half the U.S. population by the end of this year. And I think that was overly optimistic. Okay, so we're going to move on.
Optimus 3 is an exquisite design, in my opinion, and will be an incredible, as I've said many times before, predicted it will be the biggest product ever.
So Elon says that biggest product ever. Now, Optimus 3 will be the biggest product ever? Something's a little fuzzy about that. I've got some more Optimus clips here coming, and I'll explain why best-selling product ever. If you listen to what he says next, it's like, I don't know if it's next or the other one.
Prototypes of Optimus 3 into this year, and then scale production next year. I'm going to try to scale Optimus production as fast as it's humanly possible to do so, and try to get to 1 million units a year as quickly as possible. Try to get to 1 million units a year as quickly as possible. I think we can get there in less than 5 years. That's my sort of, I guess. That's a reasonable aspiration, is 1 million units a year. 5 years. It seems like it.
So 1 million units a year is not the best-selling product in the history of the world. Model Y sells more than that. And Optimus will probably sell for less than Model Y. And obviously, I don't know how many iPhones they sell or how many Samsung phones they sell. Like, you're going to have to do a lot more than 1 million units a year. So you're saying ballpark 5 years from now, you'll be selling 1 million units a year. That's not the biggest selling product in history. That's something that didn't come together for me, and I don't know if anybody else understands that. Total Tesla says Elon wasn't upbeat. He sounded tired. I don't know where you guys are getting this. Where are you guys getting this? Daryl, you're really on the edge of being muted. If you're not going to offer meaningful content, just stop. I don't know what this is. And I don't know why people are saying Elon didn't sound upbeat. He sounded tired. Like, it's a conference call on some crappy phones. Are you listening to the words? Like, are you listening to what he says? Are you focused on some sort of tone thing? You expect a guy who's got Asperger's syndrome to sound like Ellen or Jimmy Kimmel or something? What the hell are you guys talking about? I think Elon was very positive. I wish they could have sounded a bit more enthusiastic. They sounded flat. What are you guys how many of these earnings calls have you guys listened to? It's on crappy phones with crappy microphones, and they got crappy recording, and I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. It sounded like a typical earnings call. I heard a lot of optimistic content. I don't know what you guys are hearing that I'm not hearing. Or if you just don't have the context and perspective to understand that this was a normal earnings call in terms of enthusiasm, in terms of the way they sounded, and it was very upbeat in some other areas, and then there were some concerns, which we'll talk about. When will they ditch the safety rider? That question wasn't asked. I assume when they get to a certain volume, they're going to have to let the safety rider go. We'll talk about that a little bit more, I think.
So the Optimus 3 design, as I mentioned earlier, is, I think, finally the right design. There'll be further optimizations, but there are no fundamental changes that are needed for the Optimus 3 design. It has all.
That's not optimistic for you? Optimus is an exquisite design. It's looking great. It's only going to need some minor optimizations. It's fundamentally sound. It's got all the degrees of freedom. Like, what are you guys talking about?
The degrees of freedom that you really want or need. So it's, we'll have prototypes of that in, I don't know, 3 months, and then start tooling up production. We'll certainly start production on that in the beginning of next year.
Start production of that beginning of next year. So Optimus will have prototypes in a few months. I think earlier in the call, somewhere else in the call, I think he may have said by the end of the year. So, the end of the year is 5 months away. 3 months is, October, 5 months is December. Well, the end of December is 5 months away. So, there'll be some prototypes of the next generation Optimus, which I don't know if we're going to see it. And then they're going to start doing some level of production. Yes, I'll talk about the new master plan in a minute, or not about a minute. It's coming. It's coming somewhere in the video in my list of stuff to talk about. Godric says if Robotaxi reaches half of the U.S. population by end of 2025, it makes a meaningful impact in financials in Q1 2026, not Q4, like Elon said. That's one of the points I made earlier, Godric. Like, it doesn't make sense that it wouldn't be having a meaningful impact on financials quicker. If you're hyper exponentially increasing vehicles and increasing service areas, and you get to half the U.S. population, you probably got to have at least 100,000 robotaxis running, and that's probably $5 billion a year in gross profit, and you're already, well on your way to that. That's a quarter of gross profit from last year. So that doesn't fit. Yeah, it's just poor. It's okay, Gavin. It's not just poor audio this time. It's poor audio every time. This is not new. Elon not wanting to Osborne his next pay package. Don't be silly. Why does I think every Fortune 500? I think this is sort of like the industry standard that every company uses. I don't think they feel the need to make it better. They don't really care about. I think people think that they care about these earnings calls. They do the earnings calls because they have to, not because they want to. Yeah. So, all right, let's move to Optimus change. Sorry about that. We got a little smaller Optimus now. I'm playing around with Optimus on my live streams just for fun.
We started the production of the lower cost model as planned in the first half of 25. However, given our focus on building and delivering as many vehicles as possible in the US before the EV credit expires, and the additional complexity of ramping a new product, the ramp will happen next quarter, slower than initially expected.
So they have started initial production of a new, more affordable model. I think Elon dropped a little bit of a hint about that coming up, a little bigger hint than we expected, and not what I expected to hear. I think I heard more affordable models plural at another point, so I'm a little confused. I think well, let's go through this. But so they're talking about the new, more affordable models, which is something a lot of people have focused on, a lot of people are excited about. I think this is a less important thing than everything else that's going on. His speech is mean. People are picking on Vibhav. I don't understand. I understood Vibhav. I thought Vibhav was fine. Maybe you need to go out in life and encounter other people. I don't know. I don't understand why people are freaking out about Vibhav.
Q3, we're going to keep pushing hard on our current models to avoid complexity. And fortunately, when that rolls away, we'll be ready with the new, more affordable models available for everyone in Q4.
Okay, so this is what Vibhav just said and what Lars just said. They're not going to be delivering the more affordable model in Q3 because the U.S. tax credit continues to the end of Q3, so they want to start selling the more affordable models in Q4. They don't want to cut into they're ramped on 3 and Y, so they can sell they want to make as much of 3 and Y as they can, and they don't want to be in the middle of a ramp and reduce sales while there's demand because of the tax credit expiring. And it sounds like they're making the new, more affordable models in the US, and I thought they would be making more affordable models in China. So I think they said, I don't know if I caught that clip, but I think they said specifically that the more affordable models they're making them in Texas first. I think it was Texas, and I think that's consistent with what we're going to hear shortly. That I expected a smaller vehicle, which is what would sell in China, what would sell in Asia, what would sell in Europe, and it sounds like that's not what we're getting. But let's keep going here.
And
Let me just play that clip again because Lars said something I'm confused about.
On our current models to avoid complexity. Then fortunately, when that rolls away, we'll be ready with the new, more affordable models available for everyone in Q4.
So I heard models plural from Lars. I've heard model from Lars before. I've heard model from Elon, I think, in this call, but Lars just said models plural. So is it a more affordable model or is it more affordable models? I think I just heard Lars say more affordable models plural. So I think it might be a decontented Y and a decontented 3 or some new manufacturing methods to reduce the cost of Model Y and Model 3. We'll see. But I thought that was interesting.
And the goal of those products was not to negatively impact revenue or gross margin, but just to make a car that everyone loves and wants at a more affordable price.
So I see from 14.4, I'm just disappointed that Tesla did not create the world car we all hoped for, that smaller car that would have a more worldwide appeal. Model Y is the best-selling car in the world. What do you want? How spoiled are you that having the best-selling car in the world isn't worldwide appeal? Are you okay? Are you feeling okay? Have you been spending too much time with Ross Gerber, Gary Black? What happened to you that you think that having the most affordable, the best-selling car in the world isn't the world car we all hoped for? We already have the world car we all hoped for. It's the Model Y. Yes, all this crying and complaining is ridiculous. Thank you, B. But Model Y is still too expensive for a lot of the world. Well, I'm in Thailand and I have one, and there's people here who have them. We want more affordable cars, and we think more affordable cars are coming, but the future is not selling cars. The future is selling rides. The future is robots. Robots on 4 wheels and robots with arms and legs. Robots. That's the future of the company. Thank you, Kevin.
Oh, we won't get into the looks because
What's the Model Y? Let's leave the cat out of the bag there.
So Elon just said it's the Model Y. So there was a question about what's it going to look like, and Elon said it's the Model Y. So that's a lot of people have been saying maybe the new model, the new more affordable model is just a Model Y or just a Model 3 or something like that. So there's two competing theories about more affordable models. My theory, and it appears from what Elon just said that I am wrong, is that they will make a smaller version of Model Y. That would be roughly 3/4 the size, a little narrower, a little shorter, a little shorter in length, a little shorter in height. 3/4 the cargo space inside, which would still make it bigger than a BYD Atto 3, which is one of the best-selling cars, best-selling EVs around. That I think that would sell well in Thailand. I think that would sell well in China and Asia generally. I think that would sell well in Europe. Sounds like that's not what's happening, but then we just don't know. Like maybe what they're doing. I don't think that car would sell in the US. So if they're doing a more affordable Model Y in the US, keeping the same size, I think Model Y and Model 3 are about as small as you can get in the US and still sell in volume. That's just the hard, cold reality of the United States car market. People want bigger cars. Will they have a different, more affordable model? Or maybe the more affordable models for Asia and Europe will be different than the more affordable model for America. We're still grasping at straws here. And there's room for more affordable. The constraint on selling more affordable model in the United States is the tax credit. That shouldn't be a constraint on China or Europe, where you don't have to worry about the tax credit issue. So I think that's oh my God. glitch. Sorry about that. Yes, I was muted. Thank you for the chat for catching me on that. Sorry. Let me go back to that. So, 14.4 says, I'm a bully. You're saying that Tesla needs a world car when Model Y is the best-selling car in the world. I agree with you that I want to see a smaller car. Denonify says a smaller and cheaper Model Y will sell like hotcakes. And this just comes down to this point that are we heading towards a world where we're selling cars, or we're heading towards a world where we're selling rides and robots? If you're selling rides, then it's not about making a car that people will buy. And 14.4 says there's already a fairly stripped down Model 3, and we have to yet to see that in Model Y. I don't think it's about stripping down. I think it's about reducing cost. It's about manufacturing methods that reduce costs. Refreshed. I think we're back. Okay, thank you. So, all right, let me go on with the video.
Dancing cat that can sing and dance, but it can.
Okay, so we've covered that there's new models. We've talked about the new models a bit. Subarashi. Thank you, Jake Hemo. So next we're going to talk about some other topics. Let's get into it.
We expect to have Dojo 2 operating at scale sometime next year, with scale being somewhere around 100K H100 equivalents.
Now let's be clear. Right now they have 67,000 H100 equivalents in Cortex at Tesla. So if next year they're planning to have enough Dojo 2 for 100,000 H100 equivalents on top of the 67,000 that they already have, and they're probably going to continue adding NVIDIA hardware, maybe by sometime next year they'll be at 200,000 or 300,000 H100 equivalents with Dojo combined with some NVIDIA hardware. Because I think there's a Cortex 2 coming. We'll see how big that gets. But I still would like to see it get bigger. WR McPhee says no sound. I think the sound is back. I hope the sound is back.
And then AI5, which is really a spectacular chip. I don't use those words lightly.
Everybody's saying Elon's down and depressed. He just talked about the AI5 hardware like it's spectacular. He talks about Optimus 3 like it's an exquisite design. Like, how are you guys hearing him being depressed? Where are you guys hearing him depressed? He's excited. Got the AI5 hardware, which is an amazing chip. He's talking about that. He talked about how great Optimus is. Robotaxi's expanding fast. And you guys are hearing some kind of tone?
Spectacular chip. The AI5 chip will be hopefully be in volume production around the end of next year.
So that's something I didn't hear anybody else talk about this. If AI5 is not in volume production till the end of next year, and what we were told before, if I heard correctly, was Cybercab would be using the AI5 hardware. Does that mean Cybercab isn't in volume production until the end of next year to match the AI5 hardware? Or will Cybercab run the AI5, AI4 hardware for initially? I don't know. I thought Cybercab was being made specifically for AI5. So there's something there. Yeah, of course Elon needs a voice coach. You guys have never edited Elon's voice. Like I go through these videos that Elon does and I edit. He's so Elon has a lot of, he's not a master speaker, right? He's not a great, but people listen to him because the content of what he says matters a hell of a lot more than his delivery. He takes his time. He thinks before he speaks. Unlike some people, Elon puts a lot of thought into what he says before he speaks. He's not on downers. It's just bad audio quality, which is common in these earnings calls.
That has a lot of potential. I think thinking about Dojo 3 and the AI6 inference chip, it seems like intuitively we want to try to find convergence there, where it's basically the same chip, but is used where we use say 2 of them in a car or an Optimus, and maybe a larger number on a board, like on a 512 on a board or something like that. If you want high bandwidth communication between the chips, for serving, doing inference serving. That sort of seems like intuitively the sensible way to go.
So there's a lot there. Number one, he's not only talking about AI5 and Dojo 2, he's talking about Dojo 3 and the AI6 that's coming probably 2027 or 2028, and making them basically the same chip. Just interesting. He has a reason for thinking that way. I don't claim to understand it. And you would have 2 chips in a car, you would have 2 chips on a robot, and you would have 512 on a board. The more chips you have on the board, the easier it is for the chips to communicate with each other. So you have some big tile or board that has really high bandwidth between chips, so that the AI hardware, the inference training hardware, can communicate very quickly, and that allows the training to be more effective. He spoke well to Bob Iger. Very nice, Phil. Very nice. Have people never listened to him before? He's a thinker. It's just his usual tone in the sound echo of the feed. Exactly. So I think, and sorry, there's one more clip about AI5 that I want to cover before I talk more.
And we're confident that the AI5 chip will be a profound game changer. In fact, it's so powerful that we'll have to nerf it to some degree for markets outside of the US, because it flows way past the export restrictions. So unless the export restrictions change, we actually will have to nerf our AI5 chip, which is kind of weird. Hopefully we keep raising the bar on export restrictions. Otherwise, it gets a bit silly.
So basically, AI5 is so powerful that it's weapons grade hardware, and they may not be able to export it, and they'll have to do some kind of functional limitation on the AI5 if they want to send it to other countries. I don't know if that includes sending it to other countries in Tesla cars. I'm not sure what he meant by that. But so you have this combination of, number one, we're on hardware 4. AI5 is coming, but not until the end of next year, which I think puts AI6 and Dojo 3 out into 2028. He's very excited about the AI5 hardware. So, you're looking out until 2020, end of 2026, really not material until 2027. But in 2027, you're going to have like spectacular hardware in these cars and in these robots. So, yeah. Sith Lord says, I've heard enough earnings calls to know a bad one when I hear one, and apparently the stock market agrees. Well, it depends what you're looking for. If you were looking for optimism about next quarter having big numbers and the next 3 quarters having big numbers, then this wasn't the earnings call for you. If you were looking for what does the future look like for Tesla in terms of autonomy, in terms of a post-autonomy world, in terms of the AI hardware and the growth of AI, if that's what you were looking for, this was a spectacular call. If you were looking for we're going to sell 2.5 million cars by the end of the year, yeah, this wasn't the call for you. Nobody even asked that question. The market cares about the next 2 quarters. Investors do not. Yeah, long-term investors are looking ahead. Sith Lord says, yeah, but Chuba's still a bit. Again, no, if you were looking for what's optimism for the future, there's a lot of optimism for the future. There's Optimus, there's AI5 hardware, there's AI6. They're thinking ahead to AI6 and Dojo 3. Like, what other company is thinking ahead to its 2 generations ahead of training hardware and compute, and 2 generations ahead of inference compute? And what companies even know what inference compute is? I think I have something on inference compute coming up next. All right, so let's see.
Batteries are just going to be a massive thing. The scale of battery demand is, I think, not that many people appreciate just how gigantic the scale of battery demand is. The way to think about it is that the U.S. sustained power output for the U.S. grid is around 1 terawatt. But average usage is less than half a terawatt. If you add batteries to the mix, you can run the power plants 24/7 at full capacity, thus more than doubling the energy output per year of the United States, just with batteries. But that's again.
Let that sink in. So this matters a lot, and I think this is I think even Elon commented on this on X as well, that people don't understand this. So in order to scale up AI training compute, in order to scale up EVs, a lot of other things you want to scale up, you need more electricity generation. You need more electricity available. So if the US currently has the ability to generate 1 terawatt at a given moment, but most of the time it's generating less than half a terawatt. That means if you ran all the power plants all out 24/7 and you had batteries to capture the energy that was not used in the moment, because AI data centers run 24/7. EVs charge in the middle of the night when there's not a lot of demand. Like a lot of the coming increase in demand for electricity will either be 24/7 demand. So a lot of demand occurs at night when there's not a lot of demand, currently a lot of demand for electricity. So I've wondered, Elon says he's thinking about terawatt scale AI training cluster. Well, where are you going to get a terawatt of electricity generation? Well, he just told you. You can build massive cluster as long as you have megapacks to soak up energy when it's cheap, then you can power your AI data center. So that's an interesting point. And so megapack, there's a lot of demand for megapack coming. And anybody who's building an AI data center is probably going to want megapacks. That's probably the solution for anybody running an AI data center. I think VibeHub talked about that in another part of the call that I might have missed capturing. Dave Rainbow says, if it's taking 5 years for Optimus to scale, how is that moving the needle? It doesn't make any sense. I think Elon said it's not moving the needle. Robotaxi starts moving the needle second half of next year. That's the next growth curve. And then in 3 or 4 years, Robotaxi scales significantly, Optimus scales significantly, and that's the next growth curve. And the growth curve for Optimus is just like more than a decade. Will Tesla use the opportunities of scale of the AI5 hardware to retrofit hardware 3 Teslas with AI5? VibeHub addresses that, I think, in 2 clips from now. So let's get there.
I think we can probably 10x almost 10x the power parameter.
Yeah, roughly.
Roughly 10x the parameter count. So this is actually a very tricky thing to do. Because as you increase the parameter count, you get choked on memory bandwidth. But we currently think we can 10x the parameter count.
Okay, so 10xing the parameter count. They use models, they call them models, to drive the car, to operate that's how the software works. There's a model inside the hardware. And they had been talking about expanding the parameter count 4x. When you have more parameters, the car tends to perform better if you're able to handle the processing challenges. So there are some bandwidth challenges in expanding 10x the parameter count, but they think they can resolve that. Gavin says, I'm a bit tired of hearing next year for many years now, but I believe in Elon, just a little impatient. Hey, if you're selling stock next week, then you want answers now. If you're not planning on selling stock for 5 years, I don't know why you can't be patient. WR McPhee says AI5 was supposed to be in Cybercab in January. Now it sounds like AI5 won't be out in volume until 2026. I don't think Cybercab is going to be manufactured in volume starting in January. I think they're starting some production of Cybercab. My guess is either Cybercab will start with hardware 4, which, look, if hardware 4 is capable of driving as a robotaxi, then who cares whether it's got AI5 or hardware 4? If hardware 4 is good enough for unsupervised robotaxi rides, who cares whether it has an AI5 chip or a hardware 4 chip in it? Not very important. And AI5 won't be out in volume until the end of 2026, is what he said. What I heard. It won't be in volume until the end of 2026, which pushes back AI6 and Dojo 3 as well. Okay.
I mean, what we want to do is we want to get unsupervised done on hardware 4 first. once it's done, then we will go back and look at what we need to do with the hardware 3 cars. I mean, like I said, the focus is first to get unsupervised out, and then we'll go back and.
So for those of you with hardware 3 cars, and I own 2 of them, what we've been wondering is, when do hardware 3 cars either get unsupervised FSD themselves so that they can put their cars in as robotaxis or be able to sleep in the backseat while the car drives them somewhere, or are they going to upgrade the cars to, and Elon has said in the past, we'll probably have to upgrade the cars. So then are they going to upgrade the cars to hardware 4, or are they going to upgrade the cars to AI 5? Well, if AI 5 isn't coming until the end of 2026 at scale, and probably not, the first thing they will be doing with it won't be upgrading hardware 3 cars. It's probably hardware 4 that's going into the hardware 3 cars. If they're going to need to upgrade them at all, Ashok's attitude is, let's see what we can do. I think Ashok is more optimistic about being able to solve unsupervised FSD on hardware 3 cars than Elon is. And Ashok is deeper in that. So people who think Elon's always too optimistic. Coach Adams says, is Roadster ever coming? I think they said there's a demo coming at the shareholder meeting in November. So that would, and most people think that's Roadster. Okay. So we got one more set of bits to show you.
We continue to make investments in various aspects of manufacturing, like the Cybercab, semi-lines, and other manufacturing spend, and the expansion of our AI initiatives. Our latest expectation for the year in terms of CapEx is in excess of $9 billion.
So they're spending CapEx on Cybercab, getting that ready to go. They're spending CapEx. We know they're building out the Tesla semi factory. They've talked about that. And they're spending CapEx on AI hardware. Now, I personally, I wanted to see CapEx be larger because I want to see them spend more on Cortex, on the AI training hardware. My best guess is there's a reason that they're not building out the AI training clusters as fast as I would like them to. Maybe they just don't think they need it. They're very close to solving. I think they're very close to having Robotaxi solved with what they have, and they're building more, right? They're growing, but I think the challenge of, because my concern is, hey, why is Colossus getting so big and Cortex isn't? Why is xAI's compute growing so fast and Tesla's isn't growing as fast? And my best guess is that what Grok is trying to do is much harder. What xAI is trying to do is much harder and needs a lot more compute. Elon's not tired. You guys are obsessed with this. Get over it. All right, a little bit more. Here's a really fun clip.
And really what's going to happen over the next several years is a fundamental transformation of the company from a pre-autonomy world to a post-autonomy. And I'm working on a new master plan to articulate that Tesla team, and there will be some teething pains as you transition from a pre-autonomy to a post-autonomy world.
Okay, so first of all, B, there was your master plan coming. A transition from a pre-autonomy world to a post-autonomy world. In a pre-autonomy world, you want to build cars that people drive. In a post-autonomy world, you're building vehicles and robots that don't need a driver, don't need a human to control them. That's the post-autonomy world. So that's a big focus, and Elon feels they need a master plan for that. Dave Rainbow says, 5 years for 1 million bots doesn't align with what's been applied in previous conversations. Targets might get revised once the pay package is agreed. I'm not cynical, just spell. I do think that 1 million bots a year in 5 years seems strikingly small. I thought he was aiming for 1 million bots a year by 2028. That run rate by the end of 2028 would be 1 million a year, and 5 years is 2030. So it's a little surprising that that's as slow as it's going. It doesn't really matter if you're a long-term investor. If Robotaxi ramps and scales, then Optimus is just later. It's pushed later, but you still get in crazy gains, and the gains from Robotaxi are so big that it doesn't matter. You're getting ads? Can't wait for FSD to hit Australia, hopefully in a day now. Yeah, that's optimistic.
Well, we're in this weird transition period where we'll lose a lot of incentives in the U.S. There's a lot of incentives actually in many other parts of the world, but we'll lose them in the U.S. But we're still at the relatively early stages of autonomy. On the other hand, autonomy is most advanced and most available from a regulatory standpoint in the US. So, I mean, does that mean like we could have a few rough quarters? Yeah, we probably could have a few rough quarters. I'm not saying we will, but we could. Q4, Q1, maybe Q2. But once you get to autonomy at scale in the second half of next year, certainly by the end of next year, I think I would be surprised if Tesla's economics are not very compelling.
So that was the bomb. Elon saying we could have a few rough quarters. Q4, Q4 2025, Q1, and Q2 of 2026. He's saying those could be rough quarters. He's not saying they will be rough quarters. He's saying they could be rough quarters. We don't know. But he's saying by the second half of next year, Robotaxi will be kicking in significant revenue and impacting financials. And then that's when the growth curve really starts to take hold and you start to see things shoot up. My guess is that the rough quarter comment is the one that sunk the stock. I think I don't think it's Elon's tone of voice. I don't think he sounded depressed. I think he said we could have a few rough quarters ahead, and that's the kind of thing that Wall Street, panics about. But, again, if you're looking out to end of 2026, into 2027, that was very optimistic. If you're looking for Q4, well, that wasn't very optimistic for Q4. I think it's interesting that he said Q4 might be a rough quarter. Does that mean he thinks Q3 is going to be a good quarter? If you think about it, U.S. buyers who want to get the tax credit are going to want to get their buys in before the end of the quarter. So that may mean we're going to see a big spike in deliveries in Q3. So we might see big numbers in Q3. And then who knows, something might change and something might get better for Q4 and beyond. Okay, so that's it for clips. Let's just talk about some of the stuff that was in the slide deck. They're going to rapidly scale the Robotaxi network, continue to expand our vehicle offerings, including first builds of a more affordable model in June with volume production planned for the second half of 2025. We're in the second half of 2025. I think what they've said in the earnings call was they don't expect to deliver these vehicles until Q4. Energy business is more critical than ever. Availability of clean reliability is necessary for economic. This is something I've been talking about. You can't scale AI data centers if you don't have enough electricity. You can't really scale EVs the way we want to unless you have enough electricity generation. And we don't right now, but if Elon is correct, and Elon's usually correct, selling a ton of megapacks, and they're opening, I think I kept this clipped out, but they're opening a new megapack factory in Houston next year. Ramping megapacks means that anybody who wants to build an AI data center can make sure they have clean, a stable flow of electricity by buying megapacks and charging them up when demand is low and discharging them when demand is high. And that's critical for development and commercialization of AI-enabled products and services. I just putting this up here because I put this up here every quarter, and there's actually zero meaningful change. I think Tesla Semi went from pilot production to construction. But there's no meaningful change in the capacity chart. This is something that I watch every quarter. Page 7, I think, of the slide deck every quarter. And I keep praying that it's going to change. And one of these days it will, but still hasn't changed. Financial summary. One big thing to note if you want to look at short-term numbers is the services and other revenue was up. I think this might be a record for services and other revenue. Supercharger revenue is kicking butt. And just in general, you have more vehicles out there. You're going to have more cars come in for service that isn't warranted, so you're going to get more there. Energy, and I had predicted 21 billion for total revenue, so they actually came in at 22.5 billion. And I wasn't like a carefully researched opinion, but I thought, based on the numbers I'd seen from previous quarters, I thought, given the numbers that we saw, we would be looking at 21 billion. We actually got 22.5 billion, so that was good. The other thing that struck me was, number one, CapEx is up. I want CapEx to be higher, but CapEx was up compared to the previous quarter, and cash is flat. I thought we were going to see more cash. We didn't see more cash. And core technology, Efforts to refine the Robotaxi offering in Austin are not location specific, will allow us to scale to other cities quickly with marginal investment. Cortex is at a total of 60,000 H100 equivalent GPUs. Lithium refining and cathode production plants remain on track to begin production in 2025. That's within the next 5 months. Onshoring production of critical battery materials to the U.S. On course to begin domestic production of our first LFP cells for energy storage products later this year. So the LFP factory that was making 10 gigawatt hours of LFP cells, that's going into Megapack or Powerwall, not going into cars. Presumably this will get bigger and they'll produce more LFP battery cells in the U.S. in the future. But this is just a start, and that's useful to know. What happens in the design studio stays in the design studio. I remember that clip. Yes. Okay, so that's everything I had for this presentation. Gianta says, I think the Tesla story is over. Time to find a new company that can 10 to 20x. Yeah, please sell your stock to those of us who believe in the company. If you listen to this video, you understand that, sometime next year, I mean, maybe even this year, if they have robotaxis covering half the country's population, and it's growing fast, at some point Wall Street has to see that. I don't know when Wall Street sees that, but at some point Wall Street has to see that. If you don't think it's going to happen, that's different. Q4 should be rough without the tax credit for all automakers. Right, so Q4 might be rough, and Elon said it might be rough, but Q3, does this mean that Q3 is going to be a big banger? Are we going to see a lot of sales in Q3? And that's the US. You got to remember that Tesla sells a lot of cars in China, a lot of cars in Asia, a lot of cars in Europe. If the US has some ripples, that may not matter as much. And our interest rate's going to come down at some point. If interest rates come down, that could be a big positive as well. Yeah, Brooke Chen, thank you, Brooke, for your question. Gianta is like down on Tesla. Where you want a 10x somewhere else? Where are you going to get your 10 to 20x somewhere else? What's the company you're going to invest in that's going to give you that? Alex says China is currently blocking Tesla's latest FSD upgrade. Any concerns with Robotaxi rollout going forward, especially in China? Elon said they're working with the regulators in China, and they'll get there. China has been positive towards Tesla for years, more positive than most of the United States and Europe, frankly. In my opinion, how many cities must Robotaxi be rolled out to by end of year to not be disappointing? I'm not really worried about it. I think it's pretty clear that they will be operating in Greater Austin and San Francisco Bay Area. And then, I don't know, 2 or 3 other cities by the end of the year would be fine. Yeah. Elon seems optimistic. Maybe it's going to be faster. I don't know. I think it's less about the number of markets that they're in and maybe more about the number of cars that they have. Because if they have 4 markets, but 10,000 cars, that's pretty good. If they have 10 markets and 5,000 cars, that's not as good. I don't think it's as simple as that. If a $30 drop freaks you out, you would never survive watching my portfolio. Exactly. Great conversation, everybody. We should do this again. That'll be in about 3 months. We'll do this again in about 3 months. Okay, we are past my bedtime. It is 10 p.m. My wife just yawned. She hasn't put the sheets back on the bed yet. The sheets were drying in the dryer, but I'll be going to sleep soon. I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you to Mark for moderating the chat. Thank you to everybody for coming and participating. They don't need to get into every market Waymo is to allow for comparisons. You need to grow and scale and do it safely and properly. Thanks everybody so much. Y'all have a great time and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.